Finnish startup Enifer is one of a flurry of new players growing mycoprotein via biomass fermentation. But what makes it stand out from the crowd?
The PEKILO process was developed in Finland already in the 60s, commercialized in the 70s, and it was in industrial production from 75 until the early 90s. And yeah, the name derives from Bacillomyces or Pekilomyces varioti. So that's the strain that they used back in the day, and it was actually selected from among more than 300 species. It was screened for its very beneficial properties, both in terms of how it performs in the process, but also in terms of its nutritional value and so on.
Okay, so what was the feedstock at the time? And if it was so great, why did commercial production end in 1991?
Yeah, I obviously get asked that quite a bit. So the original feedstock was spent sulfite liquor. So it's a very specific product coming from pulp and paper plants, and even more, very specific pulp and paper plants. So that was kind of the problem. So there were quite a few of those back in the day in Finland, but nowadays there are none. So basically the reason why they stopped producing is because the feedstock ran out, it dried up. We don't have any more sulfite plants in Finland, and there are very few globally left. So basically it was pulping technology changing what led to the original process being phased out.
So what's, how is your approach different? Are you using a different feedstock, and what makes you think, it's worth reviving this, I guess?
Yeah, so the fundamental idea behind Enifer is exactly reviving the process, but adapting it to novel types of inputs. So we're not reliant only on the pulp and paper sector, even though we do still work with them as well. Other great opportunities are, for instance, in the biofuel space, but also in large food processing plants. There's interesting types of side streams coming from there. And we see advantages both in the economics. So obviously it's a lot cheaper to use side stream byproducts as the carbon source rather than pure glucose, but it's also more environmentally sustainable.
Yes.
We're not driving primary agriculture in producing sugar.
So the organism is quite flexible. It can feed off a variety of things, and it's still pretty efficient.
Yeah, that's been a big part of our learning and development process, adapting the original process, figuring out what the fungus can and cannot eat, and what we can, what kind of slight adjustments we can do to the process.
Yes.
And then that's also been done on the end product side. So whereas it was sold to pigs and chicken historically, we've developed tailored ingredients for higher value applications, and we see that the economics are quite attractive if we take this, for instance, to pet food and we've also developed a food grade ingredient, which then of course is much higher value.
Yes, there are a few players now in this biomass fermentation space growing mycoprotein. People will obviously make a comparison with corn, what Enough Foods is doing. How does what you're doing compare?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting comparison, because these processes, they were being developed at the same time in the early 60s. But the basis was very different. In what corn does or Enough does, the main focus is on the product quality, on getting that mouthfeel. So using that fungal structure, the fiber structure, to mimic meat. And then the process has been developed to provide that. Whereas the starting point for developing the PEKILO process was that they had a side stream feedstock on their hands that they needed to do something with. So the focus was rather on how do we most efficiently upcycle that into anything, right? And then they found a use case for the end product, which was in pig and chicken feed. So I think it's a very, very different approach. We see ourselves first and foremost as a biorefining company. We take side streams from other industries and see what you can make out of that.
But what about the actual quality, though, of the end product? If you want to get into the animal feed market, pet food, and ultimately human food, what is the attraction of the actual biomass that you're producing?
So of course, it's an alternative protein. So the protein is fundamental, and we can reach high protein contents, higher than most other mycoproteins, and that's very fundamental in animal nutrition applications, of course, attractive for humans as well. The fiber is very fundamental. I think it's a rising trend that people are paying more attention to. The fiber in mycoproteins is actually very, very beneficial for your health. We've seen that both in animals, and it's also being more clearly shown in humans. But yeah, again, I think the approach fundamentally is quite different from most other mycoprotein companies that provide a wet fibrous product, whereas we provide a dry ingredient, which you would use much in the way as soy protein or pea protein is used today.
So that can be shipped, ambient storage and so on.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a bulk, long shelf life product.
And what about the regulatory status of PEKILO?
Yeah, so of course that's one disadvantage we have, that compared to corn, for instance, where fusarium has been used for such a long time and it doesn't need separate approval. While PEKILO was produced historically for a long time, it was only fed to animals commercially. There was several tests done in human nutrition, but that was not sufficient for granting it regulatory approval in humans. So that's why we've had to pursue the novel foods approval, and we're actually depositing the dossier this week.
Okay, fantastic. And are you also looking to go through the self-GRAS process potentially in the US, or the GRAS process?
Yes, so once we've done the filing now in the EU, we're going to follow up with a Singapore application, and we're also pursuing GRAS in the US. That's okay. I think there's been tremendous interest from all the segments that we intend to serve. So during these past 4 years, we've been learning a lot about our product and what is the value proposition in each segment, and we've been doing that with world-leading companies. So in aquaculture, we have a strong partnership with Skretting. They've done all the validations in salmon feed. They've really helped us understand how PEKILO behaves there. In pet food, our main partner to date has been Purina. They did a wide set of tests in cats and dogs and really, again, helped us understand the potential of our ingredient in that space. And in food, our main partner is Valio, the local dairy company. They're also a minority shareholder in Enifer. And they've done just a tremendous job in figuring out how to utilize PEKILO in the best possible way in a range of food applications.